Tell me about preaching mentors.
Well, the first preaching mentor that I would have to acknowledge is Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. I think what makes him special is that he blends head and heart, soul and spirit, the academy and the sanctuary in a way that is also upholding a legacy of African American preaching. It's a both and, it's not an either or.
Right.
You can have the spirit and have all of your senses and faculties working. You can have your mind and have some charismatic movement going on at the same time. So he's full of the Holy Spirit when he's preaching, but he's quoting Reinhold Niebuhr and he's quoting Tillich, and he's the first person I heard mention the teleological suspension of the ethical. I didn't know what that was, but it sure sounded good to me. And I said, oh, wow, he is really read. And so later on at Yale, I learned what that was. Right. But he's dropping that kind of weight, those kinds of quotes, and extrapolating on those kinds of concepts. But at the same time, he's throwing a rap song. He's throwing some hip hop images. He did a whole series in 2005 called Theology and Culture for the whole summer. So he's preaching Trapped in the Closet. R. Kelly's song at that time was out, and R. Kelly was a little more culturally acceptable at that time. He's preaching TV shows and preaching song lyrics. And so I watched how he blended, and so for the person that was a little more heady, he would grab you. But for the person who just needed to feel with their hearts, he would grab you as well. And so I was greatly influenced. And so for me to even be studying eulogies in my program, to me, he's one of the greatest eulogists I've ever heard. The way he personalizes a eulogy. I learned how to do eulogies well watching him. Another person that was never ordained to be a preacher is Ms. Ivory Collins Shepherd, my first lady, Reverend Shepherd's wife. He passed in '06. She's still alive. And as a young preacher coming up in high school, young preacher coming up at Morehouse, her lessons of oratory greatly impacted how I showed up in the pulpit. She taught me stuff like this. When you get up there, she was the sweetest lady, intelligent, one of the first to graduate Gammon Theological, first black women to graduate Gammon Theological from ITC down in Atlanta in the 50s. I don't know if you're familiar with Bishop Cornelius Henderson. I think he's a UMC bishop, black guy. Well, that was her classmate. There are buildings named after him down at Clark, Atlanta. So she taught me, when you walk to the pulpit, smile and let them know you're glad to be there. When you move your notes, don't flip a page, just ease it. You don't want the people to see how many times you're flipping. Because if they keep saying you flip the page, they're gonna start counting how many pages you're flipping, and they're gonna get nervous that this is about to be longer than they anticipated. She said, so don't flip a page, you slide a page. One day I used a word that was, kind of beneath. It was an inappropriate word in the pulpit. So she called me, oh, your sermon was excellent. I just enjoyed it. It was explosive today. She said, but you used this word that I wanted to talk to you about. And this is how she checked me. She said, your lexicon is too extensive to be regulated to a word like that. I mean, what can you say but, yes, ma'am. And she said, and not only that, there are people old enough in this congregation to be your grandmothers and great grandmothers. And they may not understand such a polished young man using a word of that magnitude. She checked me. And so literally my oratorical skills were shapen by her. She taught me what a litany was. She would do a run. She would help me with some of my speeches. You're walking in the authenticity of Reverend Jesse Jackson. You're walking into the beauty of Rosa Parks. You're walking into the brilliance of Dada. She was doing that, helping me write speeches and prepare sermons. I would call her. And I don't think she was never ordained, but God knows God used her to help me with some of my oratorical practices that I still use and teach to this day. So it's amazing that some of my influences weren't even preachers. Another influence has been Reverend Jerry Black. down in Decatur, Georgia, Beulah Baptist Church. I grew up watching him. You don't get more illustrative or demonstrative in the pulpit than Reverend Jerry Black. He preaches with his whole body. I mean, he's the preacher. Some of you that may be listening have heard of A Trip to Job's House, where he takes you through a narrative journey of what it was like to go visit Job's house when he was sick. So he has you driving down the road, shows you when the sign of Uz is, the sign for Uz, the exit for Uz is up ahead. And he's giving you instructions, turn right, and go due east. And you drive this many miles, and when you get there, grab a handkerchief, because the odor of his illness is going to meet you. And he said, and it may make you repulse. He said it may be repulsive. You may begin to gag a little because the smell from the boils. You haven't even gotten in the house yet. But he is showing you, he's doing the best of black preaching. And so he paints the picture of what it was to go to Job's house. And that's just one sermon, but Pastor Jerry Black not only is a masterful narrative preacher who is able to paint the picture, but just his embodiment, I just love it. He wears a robe every Sunday he's preaching mostly. And he's gonna show you. If Peter's walking on the water, he's about to show you in the pulpit what it literally looks like. Can you imagine being out there on the liquidity of the water? And he's just gonna give it to you. I'm mesmerized by him, and not just his preaching, but his person. He's a great person as well. So I would say, Pastor Jerry, if you cut me open on a normal Sunday morning, Reverend Shepherd will spill out. He taught me more pastoral. I was too young to listen to him preach. But I did know from Reverend Shepherd he was going to close with early Sunday morning every time. I don't care what he was talking about, but at the end of that sermon, he died. And then he's going to ask you, didn't he die? And then he's going to tell you what happened while he was dying. The earth reeled and rocked and stumbled like a drunken man, and the moon dripped in blood, and midday became midnight. He died unto the centurion soldier. So I learned, like, okay, that's something right there, because the church would stand up around that time. They might have been asleep for the first 40 minutes, but as soon as Reverend Shepherd would say he died, everybody, oh yes he did. So I learned pastoral, I learned what it means to be a pastor from Reverend Shepherd. Reverend Smith's brilliance in the preaching moment really impacted my life. Miss Shepherd taught me oratory. Reverend Black just taught me it's all right to let the Spirit take over. And it's a good thing. And I could go down a list. One other one that really influenced me that I never met, too. Reverend Gardner Taylor. Never met him, but I've read him. And Reverend William Sloan Coffin. They have been my private tutorers. Even though they have escaped this time capsule called flesh and stepped over into eternity. They're with me. William Sloan Coffin, Reverend Gardner, Calvin Taylor. So I don't preach Easter or Christmas without reading what they said about Christmas or Easter. I'm giving some secrets out here, so it's going to be some people buying some books. But I don't go to the pulpit around those high holy days without reading what they said about it.